Okay, from our studios this time in Orlando and Tampa, as we are watching the rainstorm roll in, or at least I'm watching the rainstorm roll in. This is Green Tag Theme Park in 30. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Scott Swenson of Scott Swenson Creative Development. And Scott, this weekend was the opening of Halloween Horror Nights, and I was there. I think we should talk a little bit about it because it is. It is, as we talked about last week when we talked about the report. If even the theme index report will dedicate a section to the importance and say that Halloween has revolutionized the calendar, it's a big deal. And for Universal especially, it is a full quarter of revenue that they get in 1 month.
I was just going to say, I think the first thing, before we even dive into it, I think the first thing that we have to talk about as far as takeaways go, and as far as, on the macrocosm of what we're about to talk about, is the fact that this is being recorded on September 1st. So you went in August, and the fact that we are celebrating a Halloween event in August, and that is not uncommon anymore with the larger, more successful events. It just proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that, yes, it is a game changer. And yes, it is one of those situations where if you're not doing, no matter what size you are, if you're not doing some sort of seasonal activation, especially Halloween, Christmas, summer, spring, whatever, you're leaving money on the table. And when it comes to the big parks, they know it. So, and that's why they just keep expanding and expanding and expanding. Disney has even tried things like when they tried their Princess and Pirate Nights. That was their experiment to go, well, how do we expand Halloween but not really call it Halloween? And
they did Villains Night too.
They did Villains Night, and and now they're doing Not So Scary, starting in August, because there's a market for it. People will buy those tickets.
I was going to say, this past week, it was the news in the mainstream media, not necessarily Universal, but with the mainstream media, basically everybody was talking about how Halloween was coming early. And of course, it's no news to us because we've been talking about it. But to your point, Mickey's Not So Scary started on August 9th. And so you're getting the 3 full months of it, which is what we've been saying for years. But it is interesting the mainstream media did so many articles on it, not just Universal, but kind of expanding it to be, because most stores saw a month early this year of Halloween stuff show up a month early. And then you're already seeing discounts. And meanwhile, Disneyland this week is posting about Christmas on their Instagram pages, which I was like, read the room, Disney, because just because Universal's in the news this week for Halloween doesn't mean that you need to post about Christmas. But anyway, it's really, I think, made it into the national conversation. And I think what a lot of the reporting that the real outlets have done suggests that the reason, at least that Universal is doing it, is really to shore up their lagging demand. That the summer season, at least for the parks they quoted, which would be Universal and Six Flags, that the summer season really was lagging behind what they had anticipated. And so they were really needing to bring in Halloween as early as possible, which is why they, according to the reporting, which is why they started doing the pre-announcements, and the unmasking remember I talked about how the unmasking the horror BTS tours started so early, 2 weeks before the event started. So really they're trying to bring, which is weird because we've almost gotten to a point where the traditional busy season, the summer season, is now not the busy season. Like, it's becoming a shoulder season. And I'm not sure if that's due to weather or it's the reporting said that it was due to the post-pandemic like the equalization.
The normalization. Yeah,
that's what the reporting said, but I'm not sure that's accurate because I think it might be a combination of that plus the heat, plus the lack of rebound of international travel for Florida.
I think yes, I agree with you. I think it's a bunch of different reasons. I think there's one magic bullet that once it's fired is going to change and answer all the questions. But I do think that whether it is, because I'm guessing that the decision to open Halloween when they open Halloween was made long before the summer season began.
Exactly.
So exactly. I can't necessarily buy into although it's possible, but I can't necessarily buy into the fact that they're starting Halloween early because their summer was lagging, because Halloween was on the calendar before the summer season even began, so they didn't even know that. They could have been prognosticating about it. That's completely true. But I think it's really important to recognize that because Halloween, I mean, the bottom line is the bottom line. The reason Halloween keeps expanding is because it keeps making money. And by expanding it earlier and earlier, it also, it helps with a couple things. Number one, it spreads out the money. So it's not just 3 weeks in October. Number two, it spreads out the crowds. So it makes for a better experience overall, assuming that every night isn't as crowded as every night used to be when it started at the end of September, beginning of October. So it makes in theory, makes for a better experience. And, I think you mentioned weather a couple times. I think the thing that makes it so appealing now is that if they had guests who were staying away because of the weather in the summer, it's a nighttime event.
Yeah.
Traveling, again, visiting when I was in Riyadh, they have things that close during the summer because it's just too hot. Their season is over the fall, winter, spring months. They close for summer because it's just too hot to be outside. And even when they are open, the target, most of the experiences, like in Boulevard City, for example, didn't even open until 2:00 in the afternoon and would go until usually midnight or 1:00.
Yeah.
Family attractions as well. And that's simply because it's cooler.
Yeah.
So it goes back to what we've often said, and that is look at the creature comforts. And what we have said even more often, and that's follow the money. So it's clear that, Halloween starting earlier and earlier is a trend that is happening now. And it is a trend that's happening either out of necessity based on what the reporters have said, or just out of the fact that they've done their homework and they go, hey, you know what? People will pay to come and see it first. People will pay to come early. So
we will see.
Yeah, I mean, now will it become saturated, and will we get to the point where
correct?
It'll collapse back on itself, most likely, but
exactly
at least 3 to 5 years down the road.
I think that might already be happening. So I think that's kind of the setup, and now we can go into the actual event experience and what it was like. So we'll start off this week. They started with the premium Scream Night, which is the first time they did this event, which we reported on when it was originally announced. That happened on Thursday, August 29th. And basically what it was the event doesn't open until Friday the 30th. So this is you getting to go in before the event technically opens, but it is a full experience. And you get access to the entire event is open. And it's $350 per person. That does include general parking. So it's basically $350, and you just get in and you don't have to pay extra parking, whatever. It does include all you care to enjoy food at select stations. So essentially what it was none of the regular restaurants stayed open, but all of the event themed areas, themed restaurants were open. And it was so that's basically what it looked like. So basically, you had the whole event was open, but whatever. The event experience, I think that this is probably was one of the best events I've ever gone to in terms of the experience for this event, and that's because they sold hardly any tickets. And so I think I heard from different sources they sold somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 tickets to this event. And I will just say, it's a really big park. And so what it felt like, to describe it to people, is it felt like at times you were the only person in the scare zone. And there were, so you were 5 or 6 actors to yourself because you were the only person in the scare zone. The lines for all the houses were basically 5 minutes or less the entire night, and then the all you care to enjoy food, was full servings. Now, I'm pretty sure they changed this because originally in the original copy, it talked about how they were going to be sample sizes. So I'm pretty sure originally they had planned to have it in an event center or do something more like IAPA does with like the sample size type of thing when you go to private events, but they switched it because there wasn't enough ticket sales. And so it's actually easier for you just to open the stand as normal because it's no change to operations than it is to move a bunch of catering carts out or whatever. So, of course, they ran out of food somehow, even though it was they sold hardly any tickets. They still ran out of food, which was odd. But aside from that snafu,
but not uncommon in theme park culinary. It is
yes.
Theme park culinary looks only at numbers sold and then reevaluates how much food they're going to prepare because they don't want to have waste. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for it, but I still think it needs to be rethought. That's a whole nother show. We won't dive into that. But it's not uncommon for
right. So
theme park culinary.
Aside from that snag, I think that it was a tremendous event. But in my opinion, I don't think there's any way that Universal made money on it. And I think to what I just said earlier about, again, it seems like they might have like done a Galactic Star Cruiser thing where they're maybe have hit a ceiling. So for whatever reason, this didn't sell, whether it was lack of marketing or lack of knowing what it actually entails, or the fact that the price point was just too high for what it was. Now, to give everyone context, the prices this year are expanded, are increased or whatever. So the top thing you can purchase is an RIP tour, which is about $350, $360, and it goes up from there. So it's about the same price as the RIP tour. Mm-hmm. However, you need admission for the RIP tour. So admission's at least $80. So in the chart here that we're forming, it would be RIP at the top. Under it would be Premium Scream Night at $350. And then under that, it would probably be regular admission with Express, which I also I've done all these things for y'all, so you don't have to do them. And so the regular ticket with Express came out to about $300. So it's right under that mark. Mm-hmm. And then from there, you would have, your frequent fear passes or whatever. And then from there, your standard one-night admission, which would be around $80 to $100. So that's kind of your chart. So again, this for the money paid, it was better than anything, because with the RIP tour, yes, you get taken directly to all the houses, but you don't really get time to hang out in the scare zones, and you get food, but only once before your tour starts, and you're still dealing with crowds. Here, no crowds, no congestion, no whatever. You just go in, whatever. And with Express, like I did as well, Express only cuts the line in half. So when the line is 90 minutes, you're still waiting 45 minutes. You're just paying an extra 170 on top of the 80 that you paid to enter. So it really, again, I don't think they're going to do it again, because I think they kind of saw that it didn't, for whatever reason, it didn't work. I don't know why it didn't work, but my theory is that what happened is they ended up just cannibalizing their RIP tour sales. It's
so I'm gonna disagree with you to a certain extent. Number one, it's a dress rehearsal. It doesn't need to make money. They're already going to do it. So if they
already did the team member preview, which was their dress rehearsal.
They already did the team member preview. Team member previews, having worked in the industry, team member previews are nothing like a real night at all. There is more vandalism. There is more shenanigans that go on because the team members know the park, and because they work there, they feel that they can pretty much do whatever they want. I will say that, and I'm not saying this is true of Universal, but I will say that there are parks that I have worked at in the past where on team member nights, we actually had to have extra security that we didn't have to have during the regular event nights. So it's hard. It's really very difficult. And I think they've discovered this. It's really very difficult to see what an actual operating night looks like using your team members as a model. So they're going to do it anyway, number one. Number two, to your point, everybody, and I've heard this from many, 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 many people. Social media was posting photos of empty queues. Yep. My favorite quote was, "This is the first time I've ever been to Horror Nights where there are more employees than there are guests." Yeah. And it was, so there's this perceived notion that there was great value. My guess is they will do it again because there was this perceived notion of great value, and it won't be that great next time. Because again, it had to do its shakedown cruise, and everyone was like, $350. I'm not going to spend $350 because nobody really does the math like you did. They'll look at it and go, well, gosh, I can get in for $80. Why would I spend $350?
Yeah.
Well, as you've explained, that gets you in the door. That doesn't get you in the haunts. It doesn't get you, right up to them. It's actually the second highest price because the RIP tour with your admission is going to be in the $400 range versus the $350. So it's actually cheaper than your RIP tours. And then you say, well, perhaps they won't do it because it was cannibalizing the RIP tours. I can almost guarantee you that at least, and I think these are very conservative numbers, at least 50% of the people that did the VIP night will still go back and do an RIP tour. I can almost promise you that because the Horror Nights fans are avid. They it's almost, with some folks it's almost a religion. So I mean, going back to the Hallowscream days when we were in the golden era of Hallowscream in Tampa, we had one couple, actually we had several couples, but one that I got to know, who would come they would do a VIP tour at Horror Nights on Friday night and then do a VIP tour at Bush Tampa on Saturday night. And then the next year they would flip that. And they did it every weekend of the event. So there are those fans who will, if there's something offering that they can get into, they'll do it. They will find a way to make it happen. With this particular couple, they said, this is our Christmas. We don't celebrate Christmas. We celebrate Halloween. And so therefore, we're going to get every possible thing we can out of it. And the more VIP experience people seem to get, the more they crave it, the more they want it, and the more they will absolutely not go back and do the park without it. So I sincerely doubt that it will cannibalize too much on the RIP tours during the actual run of the event. The only pushback I have heard, and this is anecdotal, the only pushback I have heard has been it's just too damned early. There are some folks, because let's face it, the people who can afford this kind of event are not your typical, teens and tweens. So they're people who are a little bit more traditional in their Halloween celebrations, and they're like, well, I would rather spend, the money later to get the VIP tour when there's actually something going on, as opposed to the middle of summer.
Yeah. So we won't know any of this.
Yeah.
Of the dozen or so people that I polled, none of them are going to take the tour. So just my very light research would push against that theory, but who knows, right? Of the dozen people I talked to,
didn't you say you took the VIP tour as well?
Yeah. So of 13 sampling, one person, but I'm also doing it so I can write a big compare and contrast research report on it because it's my life, right?
Yeah, and again, mine's anecdotal as well. I just know that based on the people that I know who are the Dyed-in-the-Wool fans, and they may even say we won't do it, and then they'll turn around 2 weekends later and go, let's go.
Who knows, right? Yeah. Basically the reasoning that I heard was that, similar to your point though, it is the same vein, but basically the reason I heard was that they're like, we're going to do this so we can experience the entire event. And then we also are going to buy a frequent fear, but like the lowest level. And then we'll just come every night and hang out because we've already done everything, but we can just chill or whatever, so that's fine.
So that means it's even going to get them more revenue because they're going to come back more nights as opposed to 1 or 2 nights at the super high end. They're going to come back 4 nights at a lower end, which still ultimately generates more revenue for them.
So I guess to be determined, right? Moving on to the actual event. So that was the preview, and then the event actually opened then on Friday, and it's been open Friday and Saturday, so 2 nights. But I think overall I did poll as many guests as I could. Overall, the sentiment that I'm getting from regular people who are in line and regular guests is that the event is more expensive and it is worse, which I think almost you would argue is the nature of things, and also is not like necessarily unexpected, because Epic, they're still building Epic right now. And so that's a big drain on not only budgets, but resources, manpower, a lot of attention is dealing with that right now. God only knows how they're going to open that next year, when Epic and Universal and Horror Nights are going to be opening in the same 2 months, and they're going to need to hire 5,000 people that don't exist currently here. And that's another podcast. But basically, and I will say also, as a person who's in the industry and designer and whatnot, you can feel that the budget is much less everywhere except for the three main houses. The ones that they are advertising, get A's for different reasons. But Ghostbusters gets an A because it is so nostalgic. It's full of Easter eggs. There are details everywhere. It is truly a great example of a maze. Insidious is actually my favorite house, and it's one of my favorite theme park houses I've seen in a very long time. And it's because they don't try and even tell a story. All they do is they're like, you're entering the further, have fun. And then from there on, it's a classic haunted house where there's just a lot of curtains and there's a lot of actors popping out of places. There's attics with crazy demons and, somebody's vomiting on you in a corner. I don't know. Like, it just goes crazy and it's just scary. It's just fun and scary and great. And it's terrifying in a way that theme park haunts have not been terrifying in a long time. So it gets an A. And then The Quiet Place, which we talked about, I know they did a lot of talking about how they were going to make it, blah, 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 all that stuff. I think the majority of that is lost on the guests, because if you don't speak sign language, you don't even notice that the people are sign languaging at you. And all the guests, to Scott said originally about this, all the guests are screaming anyway, so you can't hear anything of the quiet stuff because it's completely lost on them. But I will give them credit. The puppets, it's a mix of puppets and animatronics that they made to recreate the Death Angels from that. And we're talking like 10 to 14 feet here. And they are exquisite. And they are gorgeous. And it's great. Unfortunately, it's a scene-based haunt. And so you walk through different scenes. So if you miss the trigger because they're all animatronics, and you just miss the whole thing. So I've gone through it maybe 3 or 4 times. And I'd say it's about a 50% chance that you miss the entire haunt. So there's that. So those 3 get the A's. The rest are terrible. Sorry, they just are. They're just clearly rehashed with very little budget, where they just bought stuff from the Transworld show floor and just shoved it into corners. The streets are really, really are bare. Basically, this year, I don't know if the guests would be able to say it this way, but I can, because in the industry, they basically put up no stanchions anywhere. So the entrance has one kind of catwalk that they've put up where the 2 icon characters stand above the crowd. But that's it. They didn't. So normally what you do is, you put up stanchions, so you have lighting mounts, so you can mount lights on, and you have these, these temporary steel structures. They didn't put them anywhere this year. So once you walk past that catwalk, there's not a single prop anywhere until you get all the way down to the New York area where the torture fair is. So from the main entrance all the way down there, it's completely empty. One would say they could be doing this to help with flow. However, I would counter that with that what ends up happening is that because the only thing to do in that whole zone is to listen to the 2 icons yammer constantly, is everyone just stands there and ends up blocking the entrance and the exit because they're just standing there recording. So what it does is actually create a safety hazard because people can't get in or out of that one area. So come on. And then I don't know.
And that is designer 101. Normally, if you have a walk-in experience, and this is something that I learned the hard way, but if you have a walk-in experience, it has to stop about every 5 to 7 minutes.
Yep.
Pause and restart itself. That way you don't miss anybody, but you also don't keep people there interminably. So that is a design flaw. But
It's a design flaw, yeah.
I agree with you. Yeah. And I'm not a huge fan of, I love sense of arrival. I think that's essential, but I think that you have to make sure they can get into the park, and then you have to pulse them deeper into the park. Because if you can make it work right, if you can make your sense of arrival work right, you're pulsing people into the experience of the park, so it never gets fully gridlocked anywhere. But it sounds like that's not what's happening. You're getting a backlog right at the front, and then people kind of trickle in.
Well, and then to your point, I'm so glad about the sense of arrival. So a long time ago, Scott and I used to teach a class on, power of moments, or Scott taught it, and I just kind of like helped with the materials. But the concept of having memorable moments, right? And you want to start off strong. And so the problem is, so here's the thing: those two icons are not up there all night. I'm sure they're not up there all night to help with flow. So they're not there early because so many people are walking in, right? So they're not there early. They kind of show up around 9 p.m. and they're there, until, and then they just stand up there. So the problem is they're the only thing in that area. So when people are arriving, their first experience is just of a catwalk with some downlighting that you would see at any regular club or anywhere, right? And and there's no icon, so they don't even see an icon when you come in.
They need a sense of show, and when I say that, that means that their appearances have to have a beginning, middle, and an end.
Yeah,
and that way the people who want to experience that short sense of show, and I know there are people out there who completely disagree with this approach, but I have just seen it work so many more times than I've seen it fail. And if there's a beginning, middle, and end to that sense of arrival show, it pulses guests in. Those people who want to see it can do it quickly and then move on with their night.
Yeah. So, and I spoke to, again, like I said, as many guests as I could that were just normal people. And I heard a lot of stuff where the exact quotes are like, "It doesn't seem like they tried it all this year. There's no coherency. It used to feel like this was all an experience, and now it just feels boring. I spent most of the time tonight on my phone." It really because the problem is now the event cohesion has kind of fallen apart because there's only two main areas. There's the Torture Fair over by New York, and then there's the two scare zones that are over the Hollywood area, and then the swamp by ET, right? And the swamp by ET is always a choke point, so it's not helping to just make it another choke point again. So it's like you have those. It's very patchy because you have those three areas, and there's nothing at all whatsoever between the Men in Black and all the way up to ET. Because they took that scare zone out. So there's just, and then when you stand in line, they have moved some of the lines around. So you basically, in that area, you go walk and you're standing outside in this outside area with nothing going on. So it's really, it's patchy. And the last thing I'm going to say to end up on it is that this is the first year where I have gone to horror nights where I have felt legitimately unsafe. Like I have felt like the way I feel when I'm trying to navigate downtown Los Angeles. So not unsafe in a fun way where I'm happy that, but unsafe in a like the crowd control, because the staffing, you can tell there's not enough staffing for the amount of crowds they're trying to pump through there. And especially in those back areas where you're moving people to lines behind ET or wherever they are. There's so many people that are moving and there's no crowd direction at all. And there's no staff anywhere. There's no security anywhere. And not only was I kind of got into some verbal issues with people where yelling and whatnot at me for no reason, but also pushed and shoved because people are trying to get into the lines, right? And there's only one staff member there checking express, and the line queues up, and then people start shoving and fighting and then just jumping in the line. It's and that's beside the vandalism in the parking lot, right? So I think that's kind of pure staffing plus the amount of people they're trying to push in there, and maybe that'll equal out as less people go to the parks. But I was there last night at 1 a.m. and we still had an hour wait times for most of the haunted houses. So I don't know. That's it.
Yeah, I think that what we are seeing then is the real downside of success. The fact that Halloween Horror Nights is a very popular event, and I have not gone in several years, mainly because I'm not a huge fan of crowds anyway. So, which is weird considering what I do. But it also helps me, I think, because I always try to make sure that once you are, depending on how much control I have and what the budget is, once you are in queue, you're in experience. So I like to make certain that the queue part of the storytelling, even in some small way, if it's some audio trigger or something like that. That's sorry, I'm going down another rabbit hole. I don't care for the crowds. I don't care for I personally don't care for the amount of or consumption of alcohol that is allowed, because there are some people there who, and I know this to be true because I know these people who go and they'll go 2 or 3 times in a year, and after the second time, they won't even try to get into a house. They'll just walk around and drink and raise hell.
Yeah.
So I do understand that Universal is trying to do everything they can to keep it safe. I'm not going to accuse them of being negligent because I haven't been there. I can't do that. I will, however, say that we are also living in a very contentious time, and so much more of the angst that we are feeling towards one another is on the surface. This is not going to become a political discussion, but it's just the time that we live in, and so I think that hopefully is going to pass, but I don't see it passing. Well, it's not going to pass this season. So. Over and above the get out and enjoy Halloween early, I think my personal recommendation is stay safe, stay calm, recognize its fantasy, and enjoy yourself. So yeah, it's unique. We live in a unique time, and it's going to be unique in all of the haunts. But if you are an owner and operator, make sure you got the security. Make sure that you train your people to be calm, to de-escalate situations as opposed to escalating them, so that they don't go out into the parking lot when they're done and smash cars and vandalize in the parking lot. There's just a lot of things to take into consideration, and it's probably too late now. But just if anybody who's on a security team is listening right now, go talk to your staff and tell them to take a deep breath, stay chill, and keep an eye out on everybody, because you never know who's going to push a guest into somebody else and start a whole nother fracas. All right. Unfortunately, we are out of time. We could probably, I know Philip and we could talk about Halloween events for the next 2.5 hours, but we've gone way over. So until next time, on behalf of Philip Hernandez and myself, Scott Swenson, this is Green Tagged Theme Park in 30. And we will see you next week.
And don't forget our bonus content.
Oh, yeah, there's that.
There's that. Yes. Okay.